So have you ever wondered how you could stop that negative self-talk, that nagging voice that's in your head that's telling you that you can't succeed, you won't be this, you won't amount to anything, or you shouldn't try that? Well, in today's episode, we're going to give you a simple technique on how to create an alter ego to remove that negative self-talk from you and start succeeding anyway. So stay tuned to today's episode. Hey, my name is D. Armando Fortune. I want to welcome you to another episode of the Daily Fortune. This is your inspirational talk for the week. In today's episode, we're going to get into talking about how to create your own alter ego. See, the premise for today's conversation is that your self-criticism, that negative self-talk can be removed or at least overcome by creating a faux self, like a fake self, really an alter ego that you can use and step into and start beating that negative self-talk and getting things done, making things happen in your life. I want to begin today's conversation with a story about Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. You see, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson began his career not as an entertainer in wrestling or in the movies. He began as a football player at the University of Miami. He was a defensive lineman with big dreams of wanting to make it to the NFL. However, he found himself getting injured while he was playing at the University of Miami and found that when he got injured, he was no longer needed. And he saw that he had lost his identity when he no longer could play football, and he started going through these bouts of depression and drinking and using drugs, and his life was going, and his grades were suffering at the same time. Luckily, he fought his way out of that and found his grades a way to pick up his grades and how to get back on the football shape and get back on the field. However, when he graduated from University of Miami, he didn't get a chance to go to the NFL. But he was offered a chance to play in the CFL up in Canada is where he decided to go. The problem was he eventually found himself getting cut from the team up in Canada. Now, what do you do at this point? Again, he's lost his identity. He wanted to be in the NFL, and here it is in the CFL, and he got cut anyway. He was already living with other players, and he had a mattress that he had found out of a dumpster. He was hustling his way into eating every day, and he only had $7 to his name when he was cut. He goes back to his father's house and trying to decide how to rebuild his life. What was he going to do now? His identity was gone, and he wanted to recreate himself. He still wanted to be great at something. Now, his grandfather was a wrestler, and his father was a world-renowned wrestler also. So he decided to go into wrestling, and he asked his father to help him become a great wrestler. His father said, if you really want this, you're going to have to give 150% all the time. And his father pushed him and pushed him and pushed him to become a great wrestler. You know Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson for his role in the WWF, becoming a champion in the wrestling arena, and eventually morphing that character he created into a great celebrity on films and through his acting, and not only that, but also giving back to the various communities and foundations that he's a part of. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson are two individuals that became one. You see, his father told him that in order for him to become this great person in the ring, he could do anything and do whatever he wanted while he was in the ring as The Rock. And that is a separate identity from who Dwayne is when he comes out of the ring. So what do I say to those negative voices in your head? This is what The Rock would say to those negative voices in your head. You are not welcome in this house anymore. You are no longer welcome in this house. So go back to wherever you came from, because you cannot stay here. You know why you cannot stay here? Because The Rock owns this house. You are not welcome here anymore. You know, there's only one last thing to say. And I have to ask you, can you smell what The Rock is cooking? this is the foundation from which I want you to talk about how to create this alter ego to overcome the limiting thoughts, the limiting beliefs, the negative voice that comes in and says you're not good enough, you messed up, you will never be great. See, there's something that you have to do to quiet that voice, or at least to overcome that voice. Today we're talking about how to overcome that voice by creating your alter ego. Now there's 5 steps that I want to give you on how to create those alter ego. And first I want to talk about a little bit of my story before I give you those 5 steps. So stay tuned for those 5 steps. I'm actually going to give you a way to create your own alter ego by downloading a small worksheet for you to go through these steps. Now for myself, I created my first alter ego, was called Orlando. See, I was working for Maggiano's as a server, and when I went into Maggiano's, I came in there thinking that I had this great education. I graduated with a bachelor's degree in accounting and working for the government. I was making good money, and here I am trying to be a server, restarting my life. What? This wasn't my big plan. This isn't a big idea that I had for myself as being a server. So I wanted to create someone who wasn't depressed or sad, but they could embody all the great parts of hospitality management. You see, I really enjoyed the restaurant business, but I didn't want to be there at that time. So I created this character called Orlando. Now he was this suave, good talking, a little flirtatious guy who just always wanted to create a great entertaining time for the guests. Plus, I was working in an Italian restaurant. The name Orlando kind of sounded cool. To say, hey, my name is Orlando. Welcome to Maggiano's. I will be your server for the day. Now, that sounded really cool, and I made a lot of money with this character of Orlando. Fast forward a few years, and I have gone off and started doing my other activities when I'm running in the streets, doing all types of hustle moves in the streets. And so I wanted to protect who I was, because I didn't want people to really know who I really was. I didn't know what they was going to do. I didn't trust the people in the streets that I was running around with. So I created this character of Fortune. I wasn't a guy that would be dishonest with people. I had to create a character that was dishonest so that I could protect who I was. I wasn't a guy that would lie, manipulate, and steal. So I had to create this character that would lie, manipulate, and steal. And it worked for what I was trying to do when I was hustling in the streets. Now, it worked so well that I found myself in trouble, as you all know about my trouble with the law. Now, when I got in trouble with the law, I found myself facing these time in jail. While there, I tried to recreate myself again. I didn't want to be this hard, tough character of Fortune while I was in jail, because it landed me in jail, and I wanted to get out of jail and change my life. So while I was locked up, I started helping other inmates and learning more about myself and trying to rebuild myself. So the more I learned about myself, the more I wanted to share with other individuals and help them become better. I was teaching and learning and teaching and learning, and giving those small speeches and presentations while I was locked up for that time. And when people wanted to ask me questions or had questions, they ring out my name. This ain't the job for the professor! And some of you know from my Facebook live streams, I would put on the glasses and I'd turn into the professor when I was going into training mode. Now, at this point in my career, as I've transitioned into training, into being a speaker, I still take on the role of the professor when I take the stage. Before I go and get in front of the camera, I take on the persona of the professor. Sometimes I wear the glasses, most times I don't, because I have embodied the idea of the professor, who is a trainer, who loves people, who loves to entertain, and give and share my personal experiences with you so that you may grow, and the ideas that come along, the science that backs what I talk about. See, the professor serves another need. I wasn't someone who really believed in my abilities to share and teach, but I know I needed that character, so I created it. I didn't have all the skills that I feel I needed in order to present effectively and teach you what you needed to teach. I felt you needed to learn, because I thought about my own imperfections and how I hadn't learned everything that I needed to learn. So how could I teach you? So I created a character that could do and embody all of those things. And I would take on that character, my alter ego of the professor. Now, before I go into the fortune that you know today, I want to go ahead and pause and give you those 5 pieces of the alter ego to creating your own alter ego. So for your notes, here's where you want to start writing down these steps. 5 steps. ALTER. You know I love making it easy for you to remember because it's easy for me to remember. The first letter and the first step is A, attributes. Attributes. What attributes do you want this character to embody? What parts of yourself do you want to accentuate? What things do you wish, how do you wish you could act in certain situations? Those are the things you want to write down. What attributes do you want this alter ego to embody? Such as, again, when I wanted to be in the streets, I need to be ruthless and cunning and conniving and watchful and aware, and all these the attributes of that character of fortune. Excuse me. And then when I wanted to be the professor, when I wanted to be the professor, I had to say a teacher, loving, listening, caring, scientific, sharing, self-awareness. All these ideas I had to do to become the professor. I had to embody those attributes that I wanted to embody before I created those characters. That's the A, attributes. What attributes do you want in this alter ego? The L stands for look-alike. How does this alter ego walk and talk and dress and speak, and what behavior, what mannerisms, what kind of smile do they take on? How do they interact with other individuals? You have to define what all these pieces are so that when you take on this alter ego, you act like that. So when I was one fortune on the streets, I had this aggressive look on my face. I didn't smile too often, and when I smiled, it was a kind of a crooked type of smile. I made direct eye contact with you all the time, to that point, you know, where you make eye contact and you get to that point where it's like kind of uneasy when they're still making eye contact with you. Yes, I'm trying to look into you and let you know I'm not to be messed with, right? That's the character that I had to embody when I was the alter ego of fortune. As when I take on the character of the professor, I took on the glasses as one little aspect of it. But I also was as fun, loving, I'm over the top, celebratory, and loving you. That's the character that I want to take on. When I take on the professor, my shoulders are back. I walk and I talk and I sit straight up and I'm upright and I'm direct with my points and with my hand gestures. And when I smile at you to let you know I'm listening to you and I care about what you say. These are the look-alike characteristics for the professor. So L stands for look-alike. The T stands for to give a tale, to know what the tale is, and to have a title. Okay, title and tale are the T. So you give a title. What is the name of this alter ego? You want to separate it from yourself. The title is something that embodies this character of this person, of this alter ego, right? So it wants to sound like something that the alter ego would be known for, all right? You're creating this for yourself, out of thin air. Doesn't really matter what name you give it, as long as it's meaningful to you. The tale, T-A-L-E, is what is the backstory of this alter ego. Now, in the first versions of my alter ego, I didn't really have any backstories, but we're talking about how you're going to intentionally create this alter ego. So you want to create this backstory so you know how your alter ego came up with these behaviors, why they act the way they do, why they believe the way they do, why they think the way they do when they look, and all these attributes that come along with the alter ego you've created. How did they get there? What is the story that created this so that you can really embrace this character? See, this is also something that comes back from creating movie scripts or writing fictional characters. You create all these things to build and develop this character so that people get engaged with it, so they love to learn and love this person and learn how this person's going to act because you know everything about them. So you want to do the same thing for yourself as you're creating this alter ego so you can embody and embrace this character for yourself when you step into it. So T stands for title and tale, T-A-L-E. The E stands for elicit. So when we're talking about elicit, this is how you get into this character. Now this might be some charm, it might be an article of clothing, it might be a mantra, a word that you say. See, when I go into the professor, I say, the professor! That takes me into that mode. Just saying it right now puts me into that character by saying it, because I've done it so often that it creates it's a trigger that I created for myself to get into that character. When I was stepping out to the streets to be Fortune, it would be simply putting on a certain type of music and putting on a certain type of clothing that would embodied Fortune. So I embodied that personality by turning on that music, and I got into that mode. Riding down the street, changing into that character. I'm not that guy. What's happening? For those of you who are athletes, you understand what this is. This is when you lacing up your shoes, when you're putting on that jersey, you turn into a whole different type of person. For you going into your coaching business, it's how do you become that coach that you want to be? How do you become that speaker that you want to be? What is you going to do? For Fortune right now, that is my ring. When I turning my ring, it helps me turn into Fortune. And I'll tell you a little more about who Fortune is after we get to this last letter. The R stands for repeat. What you're going to do is continue every time you want to go into the situation that needs and requires this alter ego, you're going to do that. You're going to use your trigger and transition into that alter ego. The more you do this, the more you do this, the more you do this, the easier it becomes to transition into this alter ego. I talked about how I went into Orlando. I talked about how I went into Fortune, and I talked about how I went into Professor. But at this point in my career, when I started coaching, I wanted to kind of take pieces of all of these things and purposely create Fortune that you know in front of you. Because you can always recreate your alter ego. This is your own creation. That voice that's in your head is your own creation. Or at least it's someone that you've allowed to be created by default, and now it's taking over and stopping you from doing certain things, and it's time that you created a new alter ego that can beat that voice in your head. So I want you to embrace this character. Who is it that you would like to be? And I have a download down below this video. There's a download for you to create your own alter ego using those 5 steps of attributes, your look-alike, your title and your tail, the eliciting strategy, and repeating. Do those strategies, create your own alter ego, and I want to know what it is. What part of you that you want to accentuate and make stronger, and what alter ego character are you going to create so that you can become that strongest part of yourself? Because in the end, you were given everything that you need. You were given everything that you need to become and do all the things that you want to do in your life. So it's time that you start embracing those things, step out into your most bold self by creating this alter ego and becoming who you are destined to be. Stop listening to those negative voices and get out there and make your life happen. For those of you who know how we end, they want you to say it along with me. You can be, you can do, you can have anything you want in this world. You've just got to believe. You can live a life of no doubt, just blessings. And I'll show you how right here. And for all of you who are part of No Doubt Nation, you know what we do, you know the mantra, and I want you to say it with me. And before we say that, I've got to ask you, are you part of No Doubt Nation? If you're not, why not? Why not? This is just a small piece of No Doubt Nation where we get on here weekly and we talk about the different ideas that help you become your greatest self, to help you get the clarity, the confidence, and the courage, and teach you how to keep the commitments to yourself so that you can go out and share your message with the world and live a life that you are proud of living. If that sounds like something that you want, please go ahead and subscribe to this. Go ahead and share this message out with someone else who needs to hear it. And then join me in No Doubt Nation where the mantra is, I'm going to say it loudly and do it proudly and make life happen every day. I love you. God bless. And I'll see you next time. You want to tell those crazy negative voices that The Rock said, you are not welcome in this house. You want to tell those crazy voices in your head that tell you can't do it, that The Rock says, you are not welcome in this house. Do you know what The Rock says? You know why? Because The Rock owns this house. Tell them, ask them, crazy voices, can they smell what The Rock is cooking?